talking about it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome to the Kent City Council Committee of the Whole. Today is September 19th, 4 o'clock. We're going to get started. Melissa, can you do roll call, please?
Council President Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Larmer. Here. Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Let's get started here. We got a couple items here on the agenda tonight for the committee as a whole. We'll start here. Any changes to the agenda, Pat? No changes. Thank you, sir. Council member, any changes? Seeing none, ask for approval, please.
Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second in discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. We're going to move on to department presentation. The first one, operation. We have the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Second.
Motion in 2 seconds. All righty.
A tie.
All righty. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Move on to item B, payment of the bills. A motion, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move for payment of the bills.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Moving on to item C, information on second quarter 2023 investment report. Joe, how you doing, sir?
Good, thank you.
All right, give us some good news here about our investment.
Good news, yes. I'm Joe Bartlemay. I'm the Cash and Investment Officer for the Finance Department, and today I'm presenting the second quarter 2023 investment report. And this was presented to the Investment Advisory Board on August 24th. So at the end of the second quarter, we had cash in the bank earning a earnings credit of 5.25%. That is an earnings credit that offsets banking fees. It's not an actual interest earnings. Balance of just over $7 million in cash. We have our state, Washington State Local Government Investment Pool is our liquid portfolio. We can access that money pretty much on demand as we need it, earning 5.2%. It's an overnight liquidity, a balance of $158.6 million. And then our long-term managed portfolio, this is our investments with longer maturities, earning 1.73% with an average maturity of 771 days. Market value of $189.7 million and a total value, book value of $200.9 million. The pie chart below shows significant portions of the portfolio in the state investment pool in the red portion. The green portion is U.S. Treasuries, and the remaining about a quarter is cash and other investment types combined. Here we have our 5-quarter comparison of cash and investments by type. The green line at the bottom is cash. We're keeping just really enough cash to meet our current liquidity needs. Our state investment pool, like I mentioned, is our liquid portfolio. We can access money if we need it. We can invest it right away if we don't need it right away. Our managed portfolio, we're seeing right around $200 million. Total cash investments have increased over the 5-quarter period of time. One thing to note, we have begun our incremental increase of increasing our long-term portfolio. So in the third quarter, we've purchased some additional long-term investments to take advantage of these current higher yields. So you'll see this allocation change a little bit over the coming quarters, a larger portion in the long-term portfolio. Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joe, what was the yield on that long-term then that you just talked about?
It was 1.7.
Because the one, if you go back, yeah, go back. Okay, that's what I look at it. 1.73. That's the one you're referring to then? On the long term?
That's the long term, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority of that portfolio was purchased when yields were lower. So
Right.
as those investments mature, we'll be able to take advantage of the current higher rates.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. That'll help.
Here we have our 3-year comparison of total cash and investments, and you can see that it's 2021 at the bottom and 2023 at the top, but incremental increase, steady year over year. And just one thing to note is, or to remind you, the ARPA funds that we received is a substantial portion of one-time funds in the middle of 2021 and 22. Next, we have quarterly interest earnings over 5 quarters. Q2 of 2022 on the far left and the current quarter on the far right. The dark blue bar is general fund only, and the lighter blue is all other funds combined. So you can see a significant increase over the course of the year of interest earnings based on these current higher yields. And here we have the total cash and investments by fund. So of that total $366 million cash and investment portfolio, you can see how much of that belongs to each of the various funds that we have in the city. Significant portions in the general fund, the street, capital and project funds, utility and insurance funds. Here we have the long-term portfolio. This is excluding cash and the state investment pool. This is our long-term managed portfolio only. And as I mentioned before, if you look at the maturity distribution on the lower left there, you can see that we have roughly half of our portfolio will mature within the next 2 years. That'll be a great opportunity to reinvest at the higher yields that are offered in the market today. Here we have portfolio compliance. All of our various investment types are well within our policy compliance. And lastly, we have our portfolio allocation over 4 quarters. And really there's very little change over the course of the year as far as the allocation of our portfolio. And that's all I have. Any questions or comments?
Question or comments for Joe? Looking pretty good. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to ECDC. Tony not here. Anybody on that committee? I can kick this off here, I guess. Let's go ahead and start it. It's a resolution to ratify 2021 Countywide Planning Policy Amendment. Kristen, hi.
Good evening. Thank you all. You did an excellent fill-in for that introduction. You took the words right out of me, so I'm here tonight to talk about the King County Countywide Planning Policies Update. This is actually the second one that you'll see this year. Normally we do this at the first part of the quarter, but King County and the Growth Management Planning Policy Council have expedited this process because really the main thrust of what they're proposing for the amendments are to solidify our growth allocation for housing by levels of affordability. So we've all been talking about this. Really, I started just over a year ago, and I think the first presentation I had to you was about levels of affordability for housing needs. But it's finally made its way through the Affordable Housing Committee and then GMPC and then King County. So this is the adoption process for that. Background, we're in our inverted triangle of how we plan for growth in Washington State. This is the step between what PSRC does for their multi-county planning policies and then where the rubber meets the road in our city for our comp plan. And so what this is doing is the last major CPPs were updated in 2021, but during that same year there was a state law about planning for levels of affordability and then also some conversations about accountability frameworks. And so the county and all of the members of the GMPC said, we don't feel comfortable enough writing something right now, so for the next 2 years, we want the city staff and the board members of GMPC to work together to find a solution for these two topics around how we allocate housing needs in the county and how we do tracking and accountability. And so that's what these amendments are for. So I just discussed that a little bit. The first two relate to HB 1220, that new state law that came into effect in 2021. So this is about literally how much growth are we planning for by levels of affordability. And then the next part is making sure that it's fair so that we're keeping each other accountable across cities. And then the third part of this is really okay, now that we have this framework in place and we have these new allocation numbers, we need to go back through the CPPs and do line item edits. And so it added things like new terms because we didn't have definitions for some of the terms for what plan for and accommodate means, for example. So this is something we all have been talking about. The numbers and the allocation for Kent have not changed. So on the far left, we see over the next 20 years, we need to plan for 10,200 new housing units and 32,000 new jobs. That was ratified in 2021. What the new part is, and we've already been discussing for the last year and a half now, is how do we plan for those 10,200 new units? What does that breakdown by affordability look like? So again, these numbers and the U shape is not anything new per se. We've been discussing them collaboratively, and I know we've had representation on AHC and GMPC to really get this allocation right for Kent because there were a lot of different options. When we look at Kent compared to the county, this is just a reminder, we're a very different city than the county as a whole. And then if we were to compare this to some of the wealthiest parts and most resource parts of the city, it looks very different as well. I think there were some jurisdictions that actually had like 1 or 2 units total of housing at the 120% AMI. So we are in a very different situation. And this is just, again, to adopt that allocation. There were, I can think of about 15 different meetings I attended to talk about this, and then I know the elected officials have been in several meetings as well. The accountability framework, this was adopted again in the 2021 CPP process. This is just to establish more of the outlines of what it actually looks like. This was something in 2021 my predecessor had really advocated for because Kent has traditionally been much more affordable and been doing the work to meet our growth targets, and we wanted to make sure the other jurisdictions were also pulling their weight. And so this is something we then worked on the details of what that actually means, and also wanted to make sure that it wasn't something where the county would start doing planning for us and take over. And so we wanted to recognize the good work we were doing, hold all of the jurisdictions equally accountable for the work, and then offer opportunities for adjustments as needed. So really those are the major changes. I ask for you all, the next steps really are an option of whether you would like to ratify the resolution. We have 90 days to act on it. If we don't act within 90 days, it's kind of a weird ratification process. If other jurisdictions representing 70% of the county act before we do, then it's automatically adopted no matter what. If we don't act within 90 days, it's automatically adopted unless jurisdictions specifically disapprove of it, and then if we get the threshold, then we go back to GMPC and have more conversations. So there was unanimous consensus at GMPC on the final vote for these, so there wasn't a lot of contention at that point. I think they worked really hard to find some compromises for some of the jurisdictions that were most concerned about this.
On your second page, we talk about Kent 2044 growth target. If I read this right, what it's telling us our biggest need is 0 to 30 and greater than 120? The previous page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we need the 0 to 30% AMI housing and the 120% and more AMI are the 2 areas that we need the most housing per unit.
Yeah.
And then we end up the 0 to 30, every jurisdiction in King County needs it. It's wholesale as a county. We've not produced enough. We're a little bit unique that we actually need anything really over 100% or even than that 80 to 100 is workforce and market rate housing, and that is something that we haven't seen as much in Kent. We've seen much more subsidized housing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councilmember, any questions? Let's see, you're late. Oh, Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for this presentation. So this lower 0 to 30%, was that kind of equally distributed among the county because we have so much already here in Kent?
No, so we have much less in the 0 to 30% than the average of the county, and even much less that we need to make up for than most of the jurisdictions. We actually have some of the lowest numbers.
That's what the 2 years of back and forth and argument was
Yeah.
about.
Really the argument was over the 0 to 30 and then the 100 plus because some jurisdictions were like, we literally are not supposed to allow any market rate housing in our jurisdiction. That's not feasible either. What are we supposed to do with that?
Okay, Thank you.
Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Council President. How many regions or how many zones did you break it into? You were talking about the overlay, so if we overlaid the affordability onto West Hill, onto Lake Meridian area, how many regions were there? And can we see those numbers? Not tonight, but I'd like to see those numbers also.
Yeah, so for GMPC, they are taking numbers that come from the state down to the county, and then the county is working with the cities. And so the regions are really jurisdictions. But we haven't done this scale of a need analysis like this. I think it would be a little bit difficult at a sub-city scale, but we have other information in our baselines report for our comprehensive plan that I'm coming to you tonight about the comp plan, but not about that, but I can come back and talk about the differences in different geographies throughout Kent and where there are different housing needs.
And the KIOC information, would that be helpful at all in getting any of that information sourced?
I'm sorry, I missed.
The housing options plan.
KHOP. Yes, KHOP was also very informative in this, and so we have that information and then some additional new census data that we're overlaying to help round out the picture.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lumber?
Yeah.
Okay.
As somebody who was in the Affordable Housing Committee meetings and saw the back and forth and saw the, the other jurisdictions had very, very skewed needs. I know that there was 3 different options we were looking at. This, it's the previous slide, I think, is actually the most fair to Kent. I think there was one that would have been slightly better for us, but there wasn't a chance of it being. So I think this is a really fair compromise. And it's much better than I think the original one that was really skewed and didn't reflect our reality. So I remember the numbers, and I feel like this was a really fair representation. I did have a question on the accountability, because I know that was a hot topic.
Yes.
How are we? So what is it? It's, okay, mid-cycle check-in.
I can
Yeah, could you maybe
give
go
a
into a
quick
little bit more?
overview. So first was step one was, so there was a agreement in 2021 that all of our housing elements of our comprehensive plans, that the Affordable Housing Committee, which is a subgroup of the GMPC, would review them for consistency with the CPP. So that was the first step of, are we all, if we say that we're consistent, are we truly consistent? And then the next step is King County will work with the GMPC and Affordable Housing Committee to create a dashboard. We already have a regional housing needs dashboard, but it'll track more progress and then also track trends of what else is happening in the region, because we don't directly build and finance all of the housing that happens in our cities. There's also background noise from the market. So they're going to talk about what's happening in the jurisdictions, policies and programs that we've put in place, and then also just regional trends for us to be aware of that may be affecting all of our production rates. And then there's a new mid-cycle check-in that is through state law. At 5 years, we have to do kind of a mini periodic update now. And so during that process, if we're seeing big gaps between what our production numbers are and if we haven't been implementing plans or programs, that's when the GMPC has a role to call out those gaps. And then it's on the jurisdiction to identify something that would be similar to reasonable measures or adjustments in our policies so that we can recalibrate. But we worked really hard on this because at one point it was going to be that other jurisdictions got to vote on what we had to do. We did not like that because there's a lot of reasons why things are happening, and I don't know everything that's happening in Shoreline. It's not fair for them to tell us what's happening here. And not that Shoreline was advocating, but as an example.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lama, for your insight as well, too. Appreciate that. Any other comments, team? If not,
Seeing none, Kristen, I wanted to say that was a very good presentation. And Mr. Chair, with that, I'd like to move to adopt resolution number 2066, ratifying an amendment to the 2021 King County countywide planning policies adopted by King County.
Second.
motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you very much, Kristen. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to parks, and at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Chair, Councilmember Michaud for parks.
Thank you, Council President. We have 3 items tonight. The first is an interlocal agreement with Skip, and we have Merina Hanson here to talk about that.
Thank you. I also have Claire Goodwin, the executive manager with Skip, here to answer any questions that I might not be able to answer. Just as a quick refresher, back in 2020, you probably recall the state passed House Bill 1590, and that allowed jurisdictions to impose an additional 0.1% sales and use tax, which could be used for affordable housing and related services. We talked with City Council at the end of September and in early October of that year about options for Kent and whether we wanted to enact it in our city or if we wanted to kind of fold in under the county's umbrella. The timing was interesting, and it turned out that only the cities who imposed the tax prior to October 13th in King County were able to impose the tax in their jurisdictions. And Kent, Covington, Maple Valley, and Renton in South King County were the jurisdictions who passed the tax before King County. And so all of the other cities ended up folding underneath the King County's umbrella, which is how they're funding the health through housing projects throughout the county. In Kent, we chose to pass the tax ourselves, and you did that on October 6th of 2020. And at that time, you authorized the mayor to pool the capital portion of those funds with Skip. We actually wrote it into the ordinance at the time. And this is the one where there's 60% of the funds have to be funneled towards housing capital, and then the 40% of the funds can be used for services. So there was a bit of a lag. We haven't spent our funds because Skip was standing up the housing capital fund process. And we do have one successful round under our belt now that we did last year and funded 2 projects. 1590 funds were not folded into that round. They just weren't quite ready for that yet. So now we're playing catch up, and we have a round that just closed on September 15th, I believe. And we have 6 projects that have applied to Skip for those funds. Excitingly, 2 are in Kent. Last year, there were no projects that applied from Kent, so that process is kind of getting kicked off. But this ILA is really kind of just formalizing the agreement kind of on the Skip side. So while you all already said within the ordinance that we passed that we were going to pool, this kind of sets up the operational side for Skip and kind of sets the guardrails around the funds and the uses. Right now, Covington is also pooling. We're still waiting for Maple Valley and Renton to decide, but when they choose, I say when they choose to pool their funds, they will just be able to sign on to this agreement. We won't have to bring it back to you. They set it up such that those cities can just now sign on. And if you have questions, I'm happy to either answer them or have Claire help me answer them for you.
Any questions or comments?
Can we get a little bit of information on the 2 in Kent?
I was just conferring with Claire. The applications just recently closed. I don't know if it's appropriate at this time to share yet. I'm happy to talk with you afterwards. I don't even think that the executive board has seen all of the applications yet. So I think we can come back and share more with you about that process and what those projects might look at. But yeah.
That would be good. All right, anything else for Merina or Claire? Nope. Okay. All right, we are ready for a motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement with other South King County housing and homelessness partner cities to pool sales and use tax receipts, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Merina. All right, up next we have Will, who is going to talk about a grant for the Senior Center solar project.
It's off early for Will. We used to see him late at night.
It's another one. So good afternoon, not evening yet. So this might sound familiar because we were awarded the solar grant last year for, it was a grant match at the Senior Center for solar panels. After we were awarded that grant, it was $84,760. So it was grant matching. It was a smaller solar array that we were awarded as part of that grant. And after we were awarded, Commerce actually approached us to be they call it sort of the pilot for what they're calling the Solar Plus Storage Resilience Communities Grant. And so with that, we accepted their offer, and essentially it's an upgrade from our original solar panels to solar plus storage, which is battery storage. And so with this new grant, it is a $500,000 grant. We still are,
Cool.
Still our contribution will be the $84,000, but it's a much more enhanced solar panel system with battery backup. And so what we've targeted and designed is about 12 hours of resiliency full load on the building with the battery backup, and then it's about a 42% energy savings annually with this new solar panel system. And so that's the design, and then this grant is for the full construction design and commissioning of this new system. So with that, I ask that you please award this grant for the solar plus storage.
All right, any questions for Will? No. All right, we are ready for a motion. All right.
Wait a minute,
Oh, does someone have a question?
Council President. Yes, I was wondering as far as the time, so we approve this and then design starts, when do we actually see an array?
It's hard to say because there are lead times on a lot of these larger battery backup systems, but my expectation is before the end of next year at this point. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Before the end of next year?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we're ready for a motion. I move to accept grant funds in an amount not to exceed $500,000 from the Washington Department of Commerce for the funding of a solar rooftop array for the Kent Senior Center, amend the budget, authorize expenditure of funds, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary agreements and other documents, subject to terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you so much, Will. Appreciate it. Okay, last item here for Parks. We have Brittany coming up here to talk about Mother Africa Building Economic Empowerment Program Agreement.
Good afternoon. I'm here to present Mother Africa, who is one of 15 organizations recommended by Human Services Commission and staff to be funded with the Building Resiliency Funds. We're bringing Mother Africa forward because it's above the signature threshold, and we are still in the process of negotiating contractual agreements and scopes of work with the other agencies. So we'll be bringing those other organizations to you all at a later date. Mother Africa was recommended to be funded at $200,000 for the Workforce Economic Empowerment Program. They are an established agency here in the city of Kent. They have great partnerships. They're known for working with refugee and immigrant populations. And so through this empowerment program, the multilingual staff will train participants in workforce development workshops, things of like financial digital literacy, systems navigation, and entrepreneurship classes. They have a 10-week coaching series right now where they will have cohorts for established small businesses in Kent that they'll be training, and they'll also be offering case management services for participants to achieve and maintain gainful employment. This program will benefit moderate and low-income residents in the city, specifically immigrant refugee populations and youth, and community members who had previously lost employment during the pandemic. And so this program activity will also provide and support increased skills for professional roles and bridge access gaps as well. So this is who we have recommended to fund with the ARPA Building Resiliency Funds. And if you all have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
All right, go ahead, Council President.
Thank you. Great program, and there's such a great need out there, right? So I like some of the things that you listed for us where they can be implemented. What does success look like, and how do we know we're hitting the right pocket of people and so on?
Well, they have done training employment services in the past.
Okay.
They have been very successful with that.
Okay.
And then also, they are an agency that listens to the community's needs. And they're saying this is what the community needs because there has been inequitable jobs servicing, programs for these types of things. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate your presentation.
And Brittany, I think there's some sort of reporting that they have to give us in order to
Yeah,
get
so
the funds.
we'll be monitoring them twice during the duration of the contract. So we're hoping to start them off October 1st. It will end June 2025. So we'll be monitoring all of their progress.
Okay.
Also, one follow-up. So is it like a lump sum when you give them, or you get like some now, some later? How did that work? The funding?
We're still trying to work out those
All right.
those details.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you used the word immigrants, and lately that term's been pretty loosely tossed around. So are these legal immigrants, or are these include illegal immigrants, or all in one category? Just
I think that the agency itself has identified what that is. They have not given us specifics.
okay.
And so we're only going off of what the actual agency is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fincher, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that the agency has been in the community for a number of years and has done a lot of good work in this community with both immigrant and non-immigrant populations. So they have shown that they are an agency that has done what they said they were going to do and has helped out a number of our residents.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. All right. We are ready for a motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Mother Africa for the Economic Empowerment Program, providing up to $200,000 in ARPA funds subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you so much, Brittany. All right, back to you, Council President.
All righty. Thank you, Councilmember Michaud. We're going to move on to public safety. Chairperson, Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Council President. We have one item on public safety, and that is Washington Traffic Safety Commission Interagency Agreement for the Walker and Roller Safety Grant Program, and we have Commander O'Reilly here.
Good afternoon, Council President and council members. I'm here to talk about that. We've been a fiscal agent for the King County Walker and Roller Safety Grant for the past 2 years. It stemmed from high crash data involving pedestrians and vehicles, resulting in the highest deaths and serious injuries in King County. The focus has been on Pacific Highway South between Federal Way and Tukwila. We've been focusing on driver behavior with regard to pedestrian and bicycle safety. The new agreement is for 3 years of work totaling $614,000 over 3 years with a budget of $134,000 for year one. That would be October 1 of 2023 through September 30th of 2024. Work to be done will continue. Current strategies, which have been training law enforcement on walker and roller safety laws and best practices for enforcement and crash investigations. Community education to include pedestrian and bike safety rack cards translated into 13 languages. Community outreach with branding messages to include billboard ads and King County Metro bus ads with a focus on Pacific Highway South. Partnerships with Kent Bicycle Advisory Board and the Public Health Bicycle Safety Program to distribute bike helmets and host bike rodeos, driver observation surveys along this roadway, which have found multiple drivers exceeding 90 miles per hour. Failing to yield to pedestrians in crosswalks and many pedestrians crossing mid-block and not in crosswalks. Year one will continue with these strategies and begin to explore other pedestrian and bicycle problematic roadways in King County. We'll work to establish a pedestrian bike safety task force in King County and continue to hold high education and outreach events, observation surveys, and increase pedestrian safety signage.
Thank you. Any questions for Commander O'Reilly? Sorry. Thank you. Any questions for Commander O'Reilly? No questions? All right, I'll make a motion then. I move to accept grant funds in the amount of $614,000 from the Washington Traffic Safety Commission for the Walker and Roller Safety Grant Program, amend the budget, authorize expenditure of funds, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary agreements and other documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the police chief and city attorney.
Second?
Motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember.
Back to you, Council President.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, Public Works, last but not least, Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Council President. We have 3 items. We're going to start off with Jason Berry telling us about consultant services agreement with KBA for East Valley Highway.
All right, thank you. I'm Jason Berry, construction supervisor in Public Works Engineering. Our upcoming 84th Avenue South Preservation Project will rebuild roadway pavement from South 212th Street to South 196th Street. It's a little over a mile of East Valley Highway. This project will also improve ADA accessibility at various locations through the site, including new concrete sidewalk curb ramps at the intersections of South 196th, 200th, 208th, and South 212th Street. Work will replace heavily rutted asphalt at the north and southbound approaches to the South 212th intersection with a more durable concrete pavement. It will replace an old sewer line that crosses 84th at the intersection of South 200. It will improve drainage at the intersection of 196th, and it will upgrade roadway striping and provide various signal improvements. This project is funded in large part by a grant from the Federal Highway Administration. Along with the federal funding comes very stringent contract documentation and administration requirements, including potential for federal project management review audits. As a result of these increased requirements and audit risks, we find it extremely valuable to contract with consultants specializing in administration of construction contracts using federal funds. This afternoon, I am seeking the committee's authorization for a consultant services agreement with KBA Incorporated. KBA specializes in construction management for local municipalities on federally funded projects. With this authorization, KBA will provide construction management, contract administration, field inspection, and quality assurance testing through a subconsultant. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce the project and request approval for KBA.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
This route is my favorite route to IKEA. And because I stay off at 67. When will this project begin and anticipated when it's going to get over?
Well, we're hoping to have a pre-con first part of October.
Oh, okay.
We will likely start with the concrete approaches to the 212th intersection.
Okay.
And then we may have to suspend during the winter months.
Yeah.
And then come back in and then hit the asphalt paving next spring.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kia, thank you.
All right. Looks like we're ready for a motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign a consultant services agreement with KBA, Inc. in the amount of $401,453, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And we will get some work done down there on East Valley Highway. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one we're going to hear about is Lake Fenwick. We've been hearing about Lake Fenwick for a number of years. It says Chad, but I see that we do not have Chad.
So I am not Chad, I wish I am. My name is Rowena Valencia Gica. I'm environmental supervisor at Public Works. So this afternoon I'll be talking about the Lake Fenwick alum treatment again, but this time it's about the contract award. So in March of this year, you may remember that I presented this project to you with regard to acceptance of the King County Waterworks grant, which funded the planning and also some aspects of the monitoring for this project. So this time I'll be talking about the contract award, and this Lake Fenwick alum treatment will be funded by the King County Sub-Regional Opportunity Fund. And so alum treatment is actually a supplement to the work of the aerator that we have at Lake Fenwick. And the main objective is to minimize the buildup of phosphorus and also to control algal blooms on the lake. So what happens is that when we apply the alum, the aluminum salt will bind the phosphorus. It will form a flocculant, and then it will settle to the bottom of the lake, and then it will form a sediment cap that will continuously absorb the phosphorus. And in the process, the water will then clear up, and the algal blooms will be minimized. So we hope that this will reduce the occurrence of algal blooms by at least 70%. And the application, as you can see in that photograph, will be done using a barge, and it will move like, much like a lawnmower, applying the buffered aluminum sulfate in strips. And so in August of this year, we advertised this project for 2 weeks, and we received only one responsive and responsible proposal. It came from Solitude Lake Management. It used to come in their name, Hab Aquatic Solutions. Sorry about that. And the total amount of the proposal is $114,255, which is pretty close to the engineer's estimate. So we will be implementing the alum treatment, hopefully this October or November period, and so. But it depends on the water temperature, which we hope will stay at greater than 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees centigrade. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Well, in that case, I move to award Lake Fenwick Alum Treatment Project to Solitude Lake Management in the amount of $114,255.17, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and public works director.
Second.
Discussion? I think we should all like, as this is fully funded by grants. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And then we have our final piece, which is 2004 Sub-Regional Opportunity Fund application for Earthworks Canyon Sediment Pond Culvert, and we have Melissa Dahl with us.
The longest title ever, I'm sorry. Yes, hello, Melissa Dahl, Public Works Design Engineering. Council members, Council President, hello. I'm here to share with you the King County Flood Control District Sub-Regional Opportunity Fund. It's a fund, not a grant. We've shared it with you a number of times in the past. As Rowena mentioned, that is one of the things that helped fund Lake Fenwick. So you might get a little bit of deja vu with this conversation. This year, we're getting ready to apply for it in early October. Our intention would be to apply for it for the Earthworks Sediment Pond Culvert Replacement. It is these two culverts in mind. These are twin barrel culverts that are located at the Sediment Pond and Earthworks Canyon. They're located side by side. Just for context, they are about 30-inch corrugated metal pipes. They are a little bit warped, a little bit worn, and that's part of our interest in looking at replacing them. So for people who are not familiar with Earthworks Park, the Sediment Pond is located probably about a 10-minute or 5-minute walk in from the parking lot. Looks like a big pond. There's a picture of it in the bottom left-hand corner. It just looks like a little pond. There's a little dock that leads out to it. It might look familiar to everyone here in council because Jens Vincent came a couple weeks ago to share with some of the work that his team does. One of the things that they do every year is they lower the water here, they get rid of all the fish, and then they remove the built-up sediment. So it's a pretty critical pond in the canyon, or in the park, excuse me. And the culverts are actually the outlet to that pond. So they allow the water to come in off the canyon and then outlet further along in Mill Creek. So they're pretty critical for the overall system. And not only are they important with getting the water out of the pond, they're also important for being able to get across to actually get into the pond. The trail actually leads right over the culverts, as well as the access route. So they're critical access needs for the park as a whole. Culverts are a little undersized for what we might see for that area. They're also a little bit older, so that's why we were interested in looking at replacing them. In order to help fund that support, we're planning on applying for the Subregional Opportunity Fund to support early design efforts, cost estimates, report writing, to really help us get a package together. We are hoping that we can use that package to help better position ourselves for other grants for these kinds of projects. Figure it might be good leverage for that opportunity. Obviously, it is located in the park, so we have been in contact with parks, and we anticipate continuing to coordinate with them on this, finding something that will work for both the needs of the pond and the needs of the park. So the Subregional Opportunity Fund, the way it works is a little bit of a convoluted process, but the flood control district accepts tax dollars every year from residents, and every year they take, I got to look at this number, 10.23% of that, and they return it to local cities and jurisdictions, give it to us to use basically for projects in line with their missions, stormwater driven, flood reduction, things in line with those missions and goals. So we then are able to apply for it. Even though it's our money, we still have to apply for it. They want to make sure that we're using it in line with those. So we're going to be applying beginning of October. In November, they will actually go through everything and determine everything's approved. We've never had issues before with that. And so I'll probably be visiting you here again in a couple of months. And then that money typically becomes available at the start of the following year.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to you, Council President.
Well, thank you, Councilman Fincher. That ends our report. We will start back up at 5:15 with our workshop session, so we'll adjourn until then. Thank you. Okay, let's get started here. We're gonna have our workshop. We got 2 items on the agenda tonight. One is the comp plan, and the other is the sewer master plan update. And then, Kristen, you're gonna come out here for the comp plan, please.
I lost my pen, but I just found it. It's good to come to council twice in one night. Good evening, council. It's good to be here. I am here to report back on findings from our phase 1 of our engagement for the comprehensive plan. So we kicked off, we've been doing a lot of pre-engagement. So we had done in October of last year, we did Haunted Boulevard and started growing our email list. And then in early May, we hadn't officially launched yet, but we went to Teddy Bear Clinic. And then June 1st, we officially did engagement through August 11th. I say phase 1, really it's continuous engagement that we're doing. So if someone were to send us an email right now, we're not saying, sorry, you missed your window. We're continuing to collect and gather that information. We have tons of spreadsheets that Kelly's been working on to compile and sort it as well. But really we have 3 concerted phases of engagement. And so this was phase 1 summary. We are still working on finalizing some of the analysis and some of the final data. We actually did extend our engagement. We were able to work with a high school class today. So we're gonna incorporate that feedback in as well because they weren't in school during summer when we did our launch. So tonight I'm gonna just reorient us to where we are in our project timeline, talk a little bit about the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA scoping, and then really we're going to dig into some of what we heard as preliminary feedback. This is the start of our conversation. You all are invited to join our Land Use and Planning Board in November for a joint meeting so that we can discuss a little bit more the refinements of what we're hearing. Really the goal is we're changing this from the launch of, hey, we are doing this project and we want to hear your visions for the next 20 years, to then we're going to be funneling down into, here's opportunities for how we can grow as a city. Because again, the Growth Management Act is what's guiding all of this. And then from there flow the conversations about services and different things in our city that make up our comprehensive plan. So we are going to be narrowing down into up to 3 land use scenarios for further analysis. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going into those scenarios. And then because it's workshop and I like to hear where you all are at in this process, I did add some discussion questions if we have time. Otherwise, you're also welcome to send me an email or pick up a phone and we can talk about it afterwards. Okay. So where we're at, we really did the launch in spring of this last year. We had brought on our consultants at the end of the year when we were getting ready to do the kind of where are we as a city, what do we know, what's changed, what are the new regulatory requirements. We launched to the community in the summer of this year. And we really talked a lot about, first, our SEPA scoping. So the state process requires, we said we anticipate that the changes may be significant enough that we need to do more environmental analysis. The last SEPA we did was over 10 years ago, and so it was time for us to do a new SEPA scoping. And so that means we asked the community as part of our community launch, where are the areas of environmental concern that you would like us to look at further in our study of our future? And so that was part of our phase 1 engagement. And then we also talked with the community about their vision and goals for the future, as well as where they think growth may or may not be a good place to go. So now we're in that analysis phase. We'll be hosting a joint workshop with our Land Use and Planning Board and Council November 13th. And then we'll be really digging into those future land use scenarios through the end of the year to solidify really what visions we want to look at for the city and what the pros and cons of those different options are. Next spring, we will be doing extensive community engagement again. Sometime between the end of this year, early next year, we'll do phase 2 engagement, and then we'll do a final round once we have a draft plan. And then really fall is the time where we move into adoption with Land Use and Planning Board, public hearings, and adoption of the final plan and our SEPA environmental impact statement. So again, phase 1, this was really our first real introduction to the community about what a comprehensive plan was, why we have to plan for growth, and what the benefits are of doing it as a city. Also really being really intentional of having more opportunities for the community to just generally learn about what's happening at the City of Kent, as well as generally where we're headed in the future, and inviting people to be part of that vision. We did gather a lot of information, and so there were many different ways that people could participate. Some people said, I see 3 activities at your booth, I want to do 1, 2, 3. Others said, you know what? I'm good taking a button and following up and looking on the website myself. So we tried to provide a lot of different ways for people to interact in ways that felt comfortable for them and also were meeting their time availability. So SEPA, the SEPA scoping was one of the significant milestones that we needed to reach, and this is something that you have to do at the beginning of the project because it helps set the stage of knowing if there's any particular concerns in the community about that environmental impact analysis that we conduct. We related specifically to SEPA, we received one written comment from the city of Des Moines. We received some comments from school districts and tribes asking for us to just keep them appraised of what's going on in the process. And then we did have a hearing with our Land Use and Planning Board to receive comments in case people didn't feel comfortable writing, but they wanted to come speak on the record, and we received 6 comments during that phase. And so we have satisfied the requirement for the scoping, and so now we will be moving into the analysis phase. Generally, the comments did not have any specific environmental concerns. They were more focused on generally growth or just the impacts of growth, such as congestion, impacts to services, and the written comment that we received was from the city of Des Moines. They also wanted to discuss the fact that we have a shared border, so what we happen on our side may also affect them as well. So as I said, we did lots of opportunities for engagement. We had online and social media options. We did emails. We had an online survey. We did a lot of community events. Overall, I want to give a shout out because this was not a one-person job. I would not be standing if I did all of this myself. The current planning team, as well as some of our planning techs and our long-range planning team, all worked really hard together. Even some of the parks staff were really interested in kind of learning collaboratively as we were doing this engagement. And so this is cumulative many staff hours and many staff, different staff members were out in the community having these conversations. Also, our communications team was multimedia, did so much to help assist this. They created videos and also helped with all of the promotions and a lot of the graphics. So in addition to having our consultant support and our staff time, there was a lot of extra. By the numbers, we added 650 new email addresses to our comp plan listserv. So we have 1,800 email addresses now. So about a third more were added, or 50% were added. And then we also had, let's see, about 50,000 unique views on social media between Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also had a video played over 700 times. We did some specific youth engagement and reached about 100 youth and their caregivers or their guardians. We sent out I think it was 5 email blasts, and then we did host a community workshop, which is what you see on this far right side. We played Game of Jobs and Homes, where we literally had a game board to talk about where growth should go and ask people to work together to identify locations. And we had about 40 people attend, including there were 3 opportunities for the general public to attend, as well as a joint boards and commissions. So we invited anyone that's an active member on our boards and commissions to attend and play the game together as well. And that was really exciting because they also got to learn from each other about what each other are working on. And so it was a really fun kind of social event. We did engagement in 6 languages. These are the 6 most spoken languages in Kent, according to our census data. We had postcards that were available. So this is the front of a postcard, and then in the back it had information that was also translated. So this was kind of the easy, if we didn't know where we were going, we had full handouts, these multilingual fact sheets that were all translated, and they were 2 pages of more detailed information. But a lot of times if we were going to like an international market or another location, we would just drop the postcard so that someone could get the gist of the information and then go to the website and find more. We also had subtitles on the 2 videos that social media multimedia created for us. I want to say this is an extensive amount of work that we did, and that's not to toot our own horns, but to point out that we are right now evaluating how well we did in reaching a variety of communities with various interests and needs. And so we will be evaluating that further. I think in phase 2, we'll be exploring ways, because it was so time intensive on staff and there's an opportunity cost of other work as well, looking at ways where we may be able to explore with community partners and trusted messengers to also help get out the message as well. We also recognize, and this is not to shame any projects that may be coming after me tonight, but different projects require different levels of engagement. And so this is really one of the big visionary documents for our city. We want to recognize this may not be replicated for all projects. This was kind of a specific effort that we've been working with you on how to craft this engagement for this project. So our in-person engagement, this is a list of the places where people could interact with us in person, where they would actually see a staff member or some of the materials we had out. We started with Teddy Bear Clinic and Calsa Day, and then once we actually launched in June, we were at the Kent International Festival. We had a booth at the Kent Farmers Market, 3 days at Kent Cornucopia Days. And then we had 4 members. I'm sorry, I forgot my director. We had 4 members go out to, then it would have been about 12 neighborhoods to talk about the comprehensive plan. And we passed out all of the postcards and flyers that we had that night. And I know there were other team members that also passed them out. So we got a pretty good reach at that event. And they were also in all of the giveaway goodie bags. Youth engagement, it was really important for us. We love hearing from adults, but we also know that sometimes we don't always hear from the littler ones in our community who do have some really good ideas and interact with our city in a very different way. And so we did what we're calling vision scavenger hunts, where we created a passport booklet for them, and they had to go at the park or at an apartment, find the little flip chart that had the symbol on it, and we had a question about how do you get to school? What's your favorite thing to do in the city? What do you wish we had more of? And so the kids went to the different booths, and we had physical activities for them to do. A lot of them were water themed, so we got lots of dirty water on us. But we had the kids answer the questions. Once they completed the scavenger hunt and activities, they traded them in. We gave them a popsicle. They gave us their book back. And so that was really interesting to hear kids' perspectives. And then a lot of caregivers were there as well, so we could have an opportunity to discuss some more of the logistics. And then I talked about the game of jobs and homes. We did 4 of those. We just did 4 periods worth, so we had 12 tables of game of jobs and homes with seniors at Kent Meridian High School today. And that was an amazing, exhausting experience. But I gotta say, like, the youth in our community know what's happening, and they are very intimately interested in what's happening. And so they had I think a lot of what we heard from the broader community was echoed, but they also had some different perspectives of what they need as they mature and want to or don't want to stay in Kent, and finding out what those reasons were. So we'll be updating that information. These slides couldn't do that on the fly. Other ways that we had partnerships, we had handouts and poster boards at a variety of locations throughout the city, and then we did have those 2 in-person meetings. We really heard in the early engagement, meet us where you are, which we tried to respond to. I think, doing some evaluation and self-reflection, there were a lot of events we could partner with that were downtown. Finding options on the West Hill and further in the East Hill are things that we'd like to explore more in the future. I think it's just something that we will continue to grow and work with. Far and away, the most cost-effective way to just get reach was through online and social media ad buys. We had 4,000 unique page visits to our website, everything from looking at a survey to downloading fact sheets to watching videos. We also, I think we had thousands of people come through at the different events that we were at. It's hard to measure exactly how much reach we had. I will say the level of information you can do when someone's going by and has a kiddo in hand and there's a sticker booth and bubbles and everything. The goal of this was get information out to people. As we get into phase 2 and phase 3, we may limit the quick touch enter points and try to bring people in, now that we have a more robust listserv, to have more substantive conversations as we go forward. One of the really, really interesting activities we came up with, I'll say this goes to our consultants too, we had handmade flowers that were really pretty and vibrant. I'll show them in the next slide, but each of the colors represented a vision statement for the city, and we asked residents and community members that were walking by to help us build a bouquet for the city. And so it was basically a voting exercise of their top 3 priorities for the city. What showed up and rose to the top were housing options for everyone, access to innovative and well-paying jobs in the city, and a city that prioritizes community wellness and healthy environment. But you can see the other 2 were really up there too. So they all were really close, and a lot of people said, well, some of these overlap, some of these are hard. And we're like, we get it, but let's talk about what this means to you. So this was kind of the entry into people being able to vote. And then we had a lot more conversations with the community about, okay, so what does access mean? Is that because there's not enough jobs? Is that because you can't physically get there? And so we were able to dig into some of those questions as a conversation starter. We also, this is at the senior center. We left boards at the senior center in Kent Commons, and we switched them out every couple of weeks with different prompts. And so this was a dot voting exercise of the same question. Of course, there's so many visions that you could have for Kent, and we knew we weren't going to capture it all, so we did, if you see in the back, so this is the flower voting exercise of what it looked like set up. So you would pick your flowers and add them to the bucket, but then we also had options where people could write on postcards other visions for the city. And so these were just some that people said. We had hundreds of other ideas, and a lot of them fell under those big 5 buckets. But we did get some unique one, like ways to incentivize more diverse restaurant options, adding more sidewalk and public transportation, reducing barriers to sheltering people. So some of these fall under bigger categories that we had said, but there were specific topics that people said, I want to make sure we're specifically talking about sheltering people or reducing barriers or this type of vision under that vision statement. We used this assets and values map, and it was a way for us to better understand who we were talking to. So a lot of times when you're at these big farmers markets or festivals, they can draw people from all over, right? So we were talking to people, sometimes they came over from Auburn, sometimes people were coming down from Bellevue for cornucopia days. There were Teddy Bear Clinic, drew in a lot of different jurisdictions that they serve, and so we wanted to know, where are you coming from, where do you work, to just get a sense of, are we reaching more broadly the entire city, or are we really only reaching a portion? And so this breaks down all those dots. And so the first thing we asked was, where do you live? We were pretty impressed with the geographic distribution, especially knowing that a lot of the West Hill is more commercial on that very far edge along Pack Highway. So we did get a pretty good representation overall of people. This was people self-selecting to show us generally where they lived. And then where they worked, I will note, we did not get much in the Industrial Valley from this conversation. We did go to the Chamber of Commerce, and we have had conversations with our economic development manager and group that we share an office wall about ways to engage the business community in Kent to continue that efforts. We've had some started and we'll continue. Where do your children go to school? Again, a pretty broad distribution. Where do you get fresh fruits and vegetables? This one was really interesting. We heard a lot that people go down to Covington for fresh fruits and vegetables. I think Costco's a big draw there for sure. Especially on East Hill, a lot of people were saying they feel somewhat isolated for options for different food options. And so this was one that came up a lot, and then a lot of appreciation for farmers markets and locally owned small businesses or cultural markets. Where do you or your family gather to hang out or play? People love our parks. It was so fun to hear and see people's eyes light up and talk about the new Kirsten Park, to talk about all of the park projects that are happening, and the Chutes and Ladders Park, and all of the different things that are going on, because it really is an asset for the Kent community, and that was really shown through a lot of where people are going. And then that also showed up in where we asked where places that people are most proud of in our community. There's also Kent Station is down in this area. A lot of people talked about the Kent Station and downtown area, the splash pad. Some of that may be because we were downtown for a lot of events, as well as it was summer. But there was a lot of recognition of downtown really is a hub that East Hill, West Hill people all come to for a lot of their activities and free time. Where do you access healthcare? This was just kind of a general question. It was really interesting today talking to the students. They had a lot of ideas about where they thought additional healthcare facilities may benefit the community as well. And then we asked, where do you feel unsafe due to lack of amenities or infrastructure or people? And so we're not going to get everything out of this question, obviously. I think, our Kent Police Department has way better data and information with the community. But this was trying to get at a little bit more of, is it a perceived unsafe? Is it a perception of not having safety? And what is it about that environment that's making you feel unsafe? Is there actual physical infrastructure? What are the reasons that you're feeling unsafe in certain places so that we can better understand? Because it's very different to say, I feel unsafe because of something that's missing versus something that's there. And so wanted to get into that a little bit more with the community. I will highlight, this was during Kent Cornucopia Days, and so 132nd was a big topic of conversation with a lot of the community. And so I don't know if we had been 3 months before, if that would have showed up as prominent, but it did show up highly on our map. So shifting a little bit, those were really to kind of see, okay, where are the areas of concern in the community? Where are the areas that are valued and cherished? Are we reaching the broad community? Then we moved into our game of jobs and homes. And I'm sorry, I can send these slides to you all too. I know there's a lot of draft information in here, but I can share them as well. So this was an opportunity. We put people around a table. Most of them didn't know each other. Many people had very different opinions of where Kent should be as a community. And we said, you all love your community. You were willing to show up to meetings. We hosted them at 3 different times of day, several different days of the week to give as much opportunity for people to attend. And we said, okay, we can't say no to growth, but we can make it work for us. What do you think? And so we gave them a goal. If you have to hit 100% of our growth target, how do we do it with different housing types, and how do we do it with different types of jobs? And so these are areas that stood out among the 4 groups. Again, this is all very draft, but you can see here downtown stood out as, yes, this makes sense. We've had a vision here. We've seen Kent Station. We've seen what's happening downtown. Let's continue the growth downtown. So that was nice for me to see as a continuation of that vision of people understand that Kent has invested in this area and has seen it. Light rail stations, so on the West Hill was another one where people said, we are spending so much of our taxpayer dollars on transportation. We should make sure that it's easy for our residents to have jobs and have things that they want there. And so seeing development near transit was also another priority. Benson Corridor came up. That was another conversation where people said, wait, isn't there more frequent bus service coming in? Shouldn't we, again, put more people there potentially? And then Industrial Valley, this is really, again, a continuation of Rally the Valley and some jobs and saying, yes, we understand that this is a location that makes sense for jobs. There were some people that said, well, shouldn't we make it a little bit easier for people to get to those jobs, especially if they're maybe newer to the region? And so that's something we'll have to work with PSRC on. None of these have been vetted on feasibility. This is really the community's first take of where they think it makes sense for growth to go. This part right here came about. There was one table that was really insistent on let's put the growth where no one else is right now. Put it somewhere else. And so that one came about. We also laughed because it was partially outside of our city. So we were like, well, I don't think King County is going to let us do that. But we wanted, to be fair to what we did hear from community members. And then we did see some along 132nd. A lot of the conversation was, we know a lot of this area is already developed, but there may be some cross sections or some roads where there's intersections where we could see a little bit more intensifying of development, and something for us on the East Hill to go to, so we're not having to cross all the way downtown.
On that, is commercial, is it explained as, I'm just trying to, did they understand the difference between commercial mixed use and commercial no housing?
Yes. So we did clarify, and so you'll see a lot, on 132nd, people said, well, we want some true commercial buildings, but then also, if we're going to put housing there, we would like to see amenities with it. We'd like to be able to go get our haircut, or to have a UPS store to ship packages or do something else. And so, or, even if I live a little bit further north, I still want to be able to go to some amenities there. So we did do we had image renderings as well of here's some examples in Kent or the region of what these types of development look like. And we did a pretty robust conversation in the beginning. We did about a 15 to 20 minute presentation to set the stage for what you all have been talking about the comprehensive plan, and then really what these types of development are and what the opportunities are for home ownership versus rental opportunities and conversations around that. Oh, I'm sorry, did I go to?
No, I was just pointing out there's some single family still there, so.
Yeah, so that was, it was interesting because there were some people that were already attuned to like, wait a minute, aren't we densifying everywhere in single family anyways? And so there were some people that specifically said, I think these areas make sense for townhouses versus single or detached units, or I think this area really should, we would put single family detached in areas where people also said, I like it like this. So that was also an indication of like, this is the pattern that we like here. And so, we do see there are some single family throughout. There was a lot of conversation on the West Hill about appropriate densities of medium size apartments and mixed use versus townhomes as well. Really wanting to see shared ownership opportunities, not necessarily immediately adjacent, but in the West Hill area, so homeowners can also access the transit. So that was our kind of in-person summary of what we were doing. Now we're going to talk about our online survey. So again, this is a scatter map. This is when we asked how and where should we fit in new homes and jobs in our community. This was the response for where new homes should go. The colors represent different locations. We've done a heat map of this, so you don't need to pay close attention to this map. It's just showing people really did a scatter shot across the entire city. And also, I think, kind of intuitively understood that the Industrial Valley really isn't an area where a lot of homes should be placed in their minds, that it has a different use. So we did ask, how long have you lived in Kent? And we also asked how people were related to Kent. So did they live here? Did they work here? This will sum to more than 100% because some people lived and worked here, owned businesses here. Generally speaking, the demographics of this area of the survey results tended to skew wealthier and towards less diverse populations than Kent as a whole. Not surprising for an online survey. Normally with online, we typically hit people that are already pretty in tune with what's happening in the city and tend to be more well connected. And so that's something why we supplemented the in-person for the online. So again, we asked similar questions of where do you shop for food and supplies, where do you go for your meetings and events and services, some similar questions regarding that. Also asked, how do you move around the city? So lots of driving for getting to work and getting to school. It was really interesting. There was a strong kind of divide of students today when we were talking of, some said, Metro's great, it gets me everywhere I want to go, and then others said, it's not reliable, it's unsafe, I never know when it's coming. So there was a huge divide between the students that we were talking to today. And I think with getting to school, we also see, more broadly for the entirety of the city, that driving tended to skew more. So again, we did some heat maps for this because we had a little bit more flexibility in the online survey. And so we asked, where should we place new single, duplex, triplex, and fourplex houses? So that middle housing type. And so we see a little bit of a concentration. This is just showing where they tended to cluster together most. So really around Kent Canley, and then near the Benson corridor, and then a little bit near 132nd. Where should we place new townhomes and smaller apartment buildings? We see this shift a little bit more to more of an east-west alignment downtown and along 240th.
Would you go back to the last one for just a quick?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This was the townhomes and smaller apartment buildings. So townhomes in this one would mean more of like a master development, not necessarily a couple townhomes on a development, but a larger site that would function more like an apartment structure. Where should we place new larger buildings? So again, seeing a little bit of that recommitment to the vision of downtown and then near where incoming light rail is. And then also along Benson corridor a little bit. New mixed-use buildings. Apparently downtown is the happening spot, and I think some of that may be also because we have some examples and buildings that look very similar to our mixed-use buildings. I've seen that as a need for downtown. We did see a little bit of pockets of corridors at intersections along Benson as well, and then along Meeker. So that was so this is interesting. So this is specifically asking housing. And then we asked for jobs because we had to do different tallies. For jobs, we see it pop up a lot more dispersed. So we still see those main 4 areas, Meeker, downtown, and then the 2 areas along Benson. But now we start seeing opportunities for that mixed-use commercial, but not necessarily prioritizing the housing in those areas. This is commercial jobs, so that would be commercial without any housing in it. There was also, we see a little bit of the clustering. The Industrial Valley is a pretty large region, so I think if we were to aggregate that, that would show up close to what downtown looks like. Through conversations, we heard a lot of wanting to see some additional amenities for workers in that area so that they can run errands or have lunch or after work gatherings within the area in close proximity. And then industrial jobs, a little bit scattering throughout the city, but really a large cluster of where our Industrial Valley designates them. So this is initial kind of hot off the press feedback. We're going to continue to filter it. There's a ton of different ways we can slice and dice it to look at it. And so this was our high level top findings. When we come back to you in November, we'll have a little bit more refined and really be working on narrowing down for 3 scenarios for us to look at further. And then a reminder, we've talked about this time and time again. You know that we're talking about where we'll be in 2044, what we want to be as a city as we continue to grow up as a city in 2044, where our parents will be, what the needs of our children will be, or our neighbors. And so really, again, we're talking about housing and jobs in the city. And what we're going to be doing is through the next couple months until the end of the year, the goal is to narrow it down. So we'll create 3 options for how we could change growth patterns in the city potentially. And then we'll be looking at all the pros and cons for that. So we'll be looking at, okay, this may be a really great idea, but do we have sewer capacity there? Can we support that? And if not, what's the cost and the impact? And is that worth a change of vision and direction, or maybe not? We don't know. And so having those conversations on how it relates to how people move around the city and how it may change travel patterns, how it may affect other types of services, how our vision for our economic development and opportunities would be. And so what we do is we start with the land use growth options, and then we run it through all of these other elements and filters to kind of talk about the pros and cons. And that's really where it matters, right? Because we can say, sure, let's plop a bunch of people out in this one area that's really remote. And then when we start talking about actual costs of service or delays and lags, that's where we say maybe people don't want that, or it may not be desirable for them, or it may not be cost effective. And so that's where we get then these land use scenarios into an analysis, and then really into forming what our final vision for the next 20 years are. So our goal, we're marching towards December 12th. I'll be back for council workshop in between. We'll be working with Land Use and Planning Board several times. You're all invited to join us. We're also going to be working, our staff haven't even had the opportunity to dig in. And I think in October, we're bringing all the staff together, and we're going to have them play a refined version of Game of Jobs and Homes to kind of also point out to us where there's really great opportunities or pitfalls, because we don't want to throw something as an option to you all for us to study or the public to get excited about if we know, like, there's no way this would ever work. Like, there's a really steep grade. There's no way this site could be developed. We don't want to do something where we're setting unrealistic expectations. So we're going to work with the staff to also identify some of the pitfalls and opportunities of growth in the area. And then really next year, we really dig into these topics in greater detail, and we're kind of off to the races for finalizing what we want to do as a city for our comp plan. I think I have about 5 to 10 minutes. I'll leave it to you all for whether you would like to provide feedback now. I think the council memo that we provided may have had these questions for you of, did anything that we talked about tonight surprise you? Or anything that you say, that seemed a little bit strange or different than I thought, and where it'd be helpful for us to go back to the community in phase 2 for some clarifying questions. Also talked about the joint workshop in November. Is there anything that you saw or that may not have shown up on these maps that you would like us to explore for future jobs or housing growth and be ready to talk about in November? And then the final one is, are there other community groups or organizations you think we should reach out to? Can't guarantee they'll want to talk to us, but I will make as many phone calls, emails, meetings as I can to continue to expand our reach and partnerships. So I will leave it to you, Chair, to decide how we're doing on time and whether anyone would like to pitch in.
First of all, there's a ton of information. You know, in my opinion, right? I mean, there's a lot of things we do as council member, like the budget, but this is probably the second most important thing, right? Where we want to be, 10, 15 years down the road. So, I mean, the first draft here looks pretty good. So I don't initially have any feedback, but I would just definitely take more time to look at it. But I do know I have a couple of council members willing to speak. And Councilmember Kaur, we'll start with you, please.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Kristen, for this presentation, and thank you for all the work you and your team have put into this. And I've seen you at a couple of events and just tabling and, having fun with the community, trying to get feedback. So I appreciate all the work you have put into this. I guess a little bit surprising was to see amount of community responded to the amount of multifamily and townhomes need on the map, and specifically on East Hill by 132nd and Country Club area. That was kind of surprising to me. Mm-hmm. And I saw a commercial right by the new park is going up on East Hill. So, it's just great to see the community being engaged and giving us feedback on where they think the need is. And it's just a first draft. So I think we've done a great job here. And I'm looking forward to, what the final product will be and where I'll be in 20 years. Hopefully I'll be an empty nester by then. So in my 50s, but we will see.
This will be nearby, of course.
They'll be living home. Unless we change and make plans now for the 20 years so they are actually able to, live and afford. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kaur, we don't need to add an age to it, okay? We'll just say 20 years from now, okay? All right, Councilmember Lammer.
Yeah, I want to echo. Thank you so much. I mean, I know I saw you out at events all summer, and you and your team did a great job. As far as the things that surprised me, I agree with Councilmember Kaur. I was a little surprised. I expected a little bit more NIMBYism with single-family housing, and so the community's openness and embracing of the smaller townhomes throughout the communities was really encouraging to see that. One thing that I've always wondered when I see transportation-related surveys and, use of, how do you get here, how do you do things? One thing, we've had a long-standing problem in Kent with Metro cutting our routes. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious how much we feel of not taking public transportation is not necessarily a choice, but they don't have the option, and how much that might skew some of those results. So, I think there's definitely, arguments here that, as we build out this, yes, we're getting the north-south connectors, but it's all those east-west routes that Metro's cut. And so I think, there's ongoing conversations to be had with those partners outside of our jurisdiction. But I don't know if you got any feedback. You said that there was some transportation discussed with the high school kids. Did they have any feelings on lack of transportation?
Yeah, so we also, in Game of Jobs and Homes, there were some younger adults who go to Highline College or some of the other community colleges, and we're saying, there's physical, like, walking to the bus stop, now they have to walk a lot further because the bus locations of where they're running have changed, or the timing of they need to leave a lot earlier for class to get across town. I think, you know, we heard a pretty good smattering of people saying, and people looking at maps and saying, why doesn't a bus run this way? And all of the times it was east-west. We didn't hear much about north-south bus connections. It was that east-west. Also connections from the West Hill down to downtown in the industrial areas. If people are coming light rail, what's the plan? Like Metro, tell us what the plan is.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, we heard that loud and clear. I think it'll be something we continue talking with Public Works on and working kind of what are our options as a city. But I know we've already had a lot of these conversations, so I'm not naive to think this is the first time, but the community is definitely recognizing and feeling it.
Yep, they're feeling it,
especially I think as we're starting to see people just more active in-person engagement again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fincher?
Thank you. Same as my cohorts over on that end. Plus, I'd like to add the time of work. So a lot of people at nighttime who have night work have a lot of issues getting to work. But I was surprised, too, that we did not hear more or hear about concerns on the environment. But I was really happy to hear that they were considering the 2, 3, 4-plexes, and so that they were open to that, not just thinking single family. And I was also a little surprised that they wanted more large apartment complexes.
That's surprising, yeah.
And I will say, we haven't done, and I don't know that we really can do an analysis of, if you live in this neighborhood, did you say it's okay to put growth here versus someone saying, hey, put that growth over there? Because there's a little bit of a, you know, it may have been, I don't want to judge people's intentions, but we're not able to do a kind of a one-to-one. Yeah. But when we did Game of Jobs and Homes, we did really have some of those conversations, and we had someone, you know, we had people that had very strongly held opinions of, I want to see this here and I want to live here, but I can't because it's not there. And other people saying, I live there and I moved here because I like it here and I don't want to see it. And so we did start some of those conversations, and I think we're going to see a lot more in phase 2. You know, I think we're gearing up emotionally for it, but they're conversations we need to have as a city. And so we'll continue to have them.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Great job, Kristen and team. Yes, I saw you all summer. I'm wondering, will there be some sort of environmental component to the comprehensive plan?
Yes. So one of the elements that's new is a climate resiliency element. The state law, there's a new state law that doesn't affect us until 2029, which is our mid-process update, that requires a much more extensive greenhouse gas accounting process. A lot of things that honestly are really great, but we have our work cut out for us, and we had already committed to doing a climate resiliency element. And so what we're doing is we're using this part of the conversation around climate resiliency to kind of set the work plan for what we'll do over the next 5 years to meet the state requirements, and then identify if there's other areas that we need to discuss. So I will say we are addressing climate and environment. We will not be reaching that full amount. Also, some of it is strategic. There's funding available, but if we use it now, then we don't have funding for staff later. And so we want to kind of make sure we're not overusing and overburdening our staff now when we know that there's going to be a lot of work in the next couple of years to implement and dig into these topics more.
Great report. Thank you so much. So I guess the council member can either email you or call you.
Yes.
For input.
Yes,
So
please do.
That's yeah. So thank you very much. Any more comments before we let it go? All righty. Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Okay.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Okay. Next one is a sewer master plan update, and we have Derek.
Good evening, Council. Derek Hawks with Public Works Design. Our project team composed of myself, Drew Holcomb, and Murray Smith, who is now Consor. We're doing this project with a consultant. So today's, just want to give you a quick update on the 2023 sanitary sewer comp plan. As you see on this list here, there's some different chapters. We're required by Department of Ecology to actually go do a sanitary sewer comp plan every 10 years. We started this project about a year and a half ago. We're about probably next summer out from having a approved plan if all goes as planned. We're working closely with the long-range comp plan, actually with Kristen a lot on growth projections for the sanitary sewer comp plan. You just heard a lot about where's the growth going to occur and how does that impact utilities. Specifically, sanitary sewer is what we're looking at. Let's see, but yeah, the general purpose or the result of this plan will be, we'll have a document that identifies, sewer improvements that are necessary to meet growing demands and also system deficiencies within our system, and then how to fund those improvements, which obviously will cost some money. So if you look at this map here, you can see just a couple things I wanted to point out. One was the city limits is this outer red line. This does not encompass, the sanitary sewer system does not encompass the whole city. If you look at the yellow areas, that's water and sewer, which is much of the city. The red is sewer only. So you see the sewer, these little red sections, that's only sewer, so we have no water. And then obviously water is the blue, just the blue area is only water. So we have areas within the city that are served by, if there's not sanitary sewer, Midway, Sioux Creek, there's other jurisdictions, districts that serve our sewer systems. And there's also some unsewered communities, so those on septic. So that's obviously something that our plan we want to take a look at. But yeah, basically just for today's presentation, want to go through kind of the chapters. I thought that'd be a good starting point of what's going to be in the plan as required by Department of Ecology. And we will have to submit to Ecology for approval and the King County Utilities Technical Review Committee, UTRC, for their review and approval. So our goal is to get a draft done by about January of 2024, and then we got several months for Ecology and UTRC's review, and that will culminate next summer doing a presentation to council again, and then ideally the council approving the plan, and then that would be what we use for future projects and trying to map out the city. Let's see, go to the next slide. So chapter 1 is basis of planning. So this is a lot of Kent-specific regulatory data, federal, state, and local rules and regulations. I talked about the Kent service area vicinity and the sewer basins. So a lot of details, detail items. But here you see a couple of your staff putting on a manhole casting on the left. So that, yeah, typical manhole, and then a generator, a backup generator over at Horseshoe Pump Station on the right. Been to a few Jen's presentations, so I know you council likes to see the sewer system in action. There's some nice grease balls down there on the right. This is one of our pump stations. So, yeah, so this chapter 2 is this is kind of the biggest component of the plan, the existing collection system and the conveyance system. So, basically, future population and employment numbers, existing and future. Existing data is based on water meter consumption data, so that's how we bill out our sewer. We're looking to see what goes to our sewer. Biggest component is developing a hydraulic model. This is obviously why we needed a consultant to do that. Then model future wastewater flow projections. This is where the comp plan, we really have a lot of overlap with the comp plan. And then the comprehensive plan and future growth projections. The hydraulic model we built using GIS data of our system. So a lot of data went into that, and we did some flow monitoring. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And then once complete, the city will own the sewer model. So then we can, if we get development in, we can model what that would look like and see how that affects the system. Again, working very closely with the planning department and the comp plan project team, determine future growth areas, and then projections and how that will affect the sanitary sewer system. Next slide. Some more details about talking about coordination with the comp plan. So Public Works and ECD have been meeting to ensure both plans reflect proposed changes. Of course, you've heard about House Bill, I think it was 1110, and the ADUs that are going to be allowed in the city and where that growth is occurring. And then comprehensive plan is proposing 3 growth areas. We want to really hone in on those areas as we input higher demands into our model to see how that affects the system. And then also the downtown sub-area plan, we want to kind of coordinate a little bit with that and make sure that we're, those pipes that are older in downtown, that those get replaced or are identified in the plan as well. The comp plan is going to provide the projections on where the growth is likely to occur, and then again we'll use those in our model. Fortunately or unfortunately, we're a little bit ahead of the comp plan, so we've been working with Kristen to try to preliminarily get to know where these growth areas are, so I was excited to see a lot of the information presented today. But ideally, for our model to stay on schedule, like in October next month, we'll need to kind of really know where these areas are, which I doubt we're going to have by then. So we need to coordinate and just try to get the best guess as we move forward. Move on to the next slide. For hydraulic models, the biggest thing in calibrating the model is what is our base case. So we did some flow monitoring throughout the city. I'll talk about that in the next slide some more. But you get your base case, no rain, what does the sanitary sewer system look like? And then we did some modeling or some flow measurements from, I believe it was August, September into December. So we got some good rain events. This slide is from King County, provided this slide. It shows what's called inflow and infiltration. So inflow is identified, the areas in black, so you have, in the summertime, you just have everything coming from the house that goes to the sanitary sewer system, and that's what your flow is, so lower flows. Inflow, you have, roof drains maybe that are connected, and then uncapped clean out, and all of that goes in the system in wet weather. And that adds a lot to the sewer systems, it reduces the capacity. Infiltration, you might hear often, that's, examples of that would be the text in white, root intrusion. You see this tree here, and the roots kind of get into the sewer system, or the manhole has a faulty cover or cracks, crack in the manhole, cracks in the pipe. All of that contribute to groundwater getting in the system, something that we have to account for. Worst case scenario, we have a lot of rain, have a lot of groundwater, that adds water or flow to the system and reduces our capacity for development. Part of this project, though, we're doing a hydraulic model, so we're not looking at necessarily the flows across land, which is hydrologic. We're looking at the pipe flows. Much of the calibrating the model uses this data from the flow monitoring to calibrate the model to make sure it reflects accurately what happens during rain events or dry periods. So we had 11 stations, flow monitoring stations across the city. This is a typical report, flow monitoring site report on the left. It also shows on the right, upper right. This is another flow monitoring report. You can see the different colors. The dark blue on the bottom is rainfall. So you see the rainfall down here, and then you see the Q, or quantity of flow in the system, so that peaks when you get higher rainfall. And then the black is the depth in the pipe of where the water level was during those events, and the red is, let's see if I can read this. I'm sorry, pipe height. So the height of the water in the pipe, and the velocity is the black. So. So basically you take all this data and the consultant put all this together. They then look at, on the bottom of the page, you see this sheet. The red is the simulated flows, and the blue is the observed flows. So you try to, you can change some parameters in the model that help to sync those up. So the closer they are together, that means the model is accurately reflecting what happens in the real world. So, so moving on. This slide, so we wanted to evaluate the sewer system's ability to provide sufficient flow in the pipes. To kind of equate that, I think it's a good comparison to look at level of service for roadway. So you see, if the pipe's full, like it would be at the bottom in a transportation system, all the cars are at a grid, they're not moving, everything's backed up, versus level of service A up at the top. There's plenty of room in the pipe, there's plenty of traffic, there's lots of lanes that are open and cars can kind of get through. So just kind of put that into comparison. But our water model will also provide or develop level of service maps that we can use showing conditions of pipes and conditions of structures. We also did some pump station evaluations to determine those deficiencies and likelihood or consequence of failure, what that would do to the system as well. Okay, so this was a sanitary sewer evaluation slide. Talking about the hydraulic model. So this map here, this shows our overall, our sanitary sewer collection system. The yellow lines are our City of Kent lines. The green lines are King County Metro's, main feeders throughout the city. Then you see the little blue dots are the flow monitors that we put into specific manholes. And then King County was, our consultant was able to contact them and get all these red dots, or King County's flow monitoring data that they gave to us. So this is what they had during the same time period. So really appreciate King County sharing that information with us. So in the model, you can imagine we pulled all this data in from GIS to create the sewer system model. We then calibrated the model based on the flow monitoring data that we have and looking at the INI. And then we run the model using the additional demands that we're going to have from the long-range plan and other locations. And because of growth, it'll determine where deficiencies are in our system and where we need to upgrade pipes, or potentially for unsewered areas where we need to extend sewer system to get out to those areas. And again, the city limits do not match the existing sewer service area. That's okay, but I think the focus on the unsewered areas is where, talk about environment, those are discharging a septic into the ground. So want to try to address those if we can. Moving on to the next slide. Wastewater treatment and water reclamation and reuse. So this is for the city, it's pretty easy because all of our sanitary sewer goes to the King County South Treatment Plant over in Renton. It's near Starfire Sports Complex, just to the east of that. So again, King County's lines run through the city. We tie into those lines in multiple locations, and it all ends up at this plant. Next chapter will be on operations and maintenance. These are, look at current O&M staff, operation and maintenance staff, safety practices and programs within our department, TV inspection frequency. And as you can see, these are two of your city staff TV in the sewer system. They try to do that every 10 years or so, get through and TV every pipe. I think we have over 200 miles of pipe, so that takes about 10 years to do that. But but good data to have. We use it on the design side. If we're need to look at a TV report, we can get in there, look at the video, and see what pipes have cracks or have collapses or damaged pipes, so we know what to replace. Chapter 6 will be about the capital improvement program. So identify capital improvement projects, inventory potential deficiencies, and model those deficiencies. But the biggest thing is develop the CIP capital improvement plan project list for the next 20-year planning horizons. I'll be in my 60s by then, so 20 years from now. Same synced up, same time period that the long-range plan is. But then we'll also have a list year by year for the next 6 years of what we plan to do. So engineering and operations will work closely on identifying those. This little chart here just shows, you see the pipe going down the hill, and you see what's called the hydraulic grade line. You see where the water is showing in those pipes. At this point, you would have a potential overflow on the ground. It shows that the steeper this line, that means that that line's probably undersized. So in this case, probably those couple pipes would need to be replaced. But this is what the consultant's looking at, running the model and seeing like where the pipe is full or more than full, and it's surcharging back up into the manholes. So projects identified in the plan will address capacity and conditional deficiencies for the 20-year planning horizon. And the model again will be ours to use for other purposes too, as we have development coming into the city. Chapter 7 is the financial strategy. So basically identifying funding opportunities to how we're going to pay for all this stuff, right? All these improvements, both replacement of existing pipes, but also new pipes or upsizing pipes. And we'll do a financial gap analysis to determine funding needs. The slides on the left is our rate structure from 2023, and on the bottom is water, sewer, and storm rates. I'll highlight that existing sewer fees, are meant to pay for O&M, operation maintenance costs, depreciation, kind of replacement of pipes. We put in about $3.5 million a year into our capital project fund to do that. But that's probably not going to be enough, especially as we develop this list of projects. One thing we don't have is what's called a system development charge. So we have it for water and storm, but not for sewer. So I'll have some slides that kind of show our comparisons to other cities. Those are also like connection fees. So for a developer to connect to our system, we charge a system development charge for other services, but not really for sewer. That helps. Those costs help offset the cost of, do we need to expand those pipes, make those pipes bigger? Do we need to use them for, service to a development? Helps pay for those costs. And then obviously the plan will also identify grant funding opportunities, help pay for these projects. Specifically, there's a lot of money for unsewered communities, so hopefully we'll have some good options to look at funding some of those projects. So here's for residential rates. This is our typical sewer monthly cost. So you'll see Kent is kind of in the middle. So if you compare us to other jurisdictions, we got Auburn, Bellevue, Covington, Federal Way, Kent, Kirkland, Redmond, and Renton. So some are higher. Bellevue's higher. A couple of Federal Ways a little bit lower. Maybe Covington's a little bit lower. But in general, Redmond's a little lower, but kind of in the middle of the road. I think where we're really we'll need to focus on is connection and permit fees to the same jurisdictions, and you see we have approximately $100 connection fee and $648 permit fee. Permit fees look pretty comparable to our surrounding jurisdictions, but connection fees are a lot lower. So if you look at our water connection system development fees, they're pretty good rates there to help pay for the system, but this is what Kent has. So. This will be a big shortfall in the funding analysis.
Why such a difference? Yeah.
That's our fee structure. So let me go to the next slide too.
Is that for every
This is residential.
Residential?
I'm sorry, yes. These are residential comparisons only. We'll look at commercial also.
Okay.
But just want to give you a snapshot of where the residential was stacking up.
Wow, that just blows my mind. That's a problem.
Yes.
Big difference.
And then so what we did was we took these fees and we kind of broke out the water's on top, side sewer permits or sanitary sewer in the middle, and stormwater on the bottom. So there you see, $648 is our side sewer permit, and then side sewer with a tap is basically $100 for 8-inch city main or smaller. That's a tap charge. That's it. Whereas water, if you go up to water, a 5/8-inch meter cost is $100. System development charge is $9,300. And then you have some other fees with the technician fees. So so this will be definitely a discussion that we're going to have in the financial analysis. I will highlight that we're doing most of this work for this chapter in-house. So Angie, with our Public Works finance staff, her and Drew and I, and Angie's staff will be trying to put this package for this chapter together. But again, the goal of the plan is really to develop a model, pull together the efficiencies, incorporate the growth areas of where additional demand is going to be, and then map out our 20-year list of projects, and those projects we'll prioritize and then try to knock those out with the funding we have available. But I can already tell you we're going to need to identify funding sources to pay for that. So. But really excited to work on this plan. Happy to answer any questions that the council may have. This is info only, so there's no motions or anything needed.
Thank you very much. I was wondering when you got here, I was hoping it would be tied to the comp plan, right? So I was happy to see that those two are
very integrated,
tied together, so that's good to hear. Great presentation. I don't have any comments. Councilmember Kaur?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Derek. Can we go back to the slide with the pricing?
With permit,
fees. The next one, please.
This one?
No, the one back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right here, so Bellevue doesn't have any connection fees?
So Corey with Angie's group, yeah, they looked at that. They put this, I need to give them credit for putting together this presentation. So yeah, according to her research, they do not have one.
So this is the fee that developers pay, correct, for the permits? Is our permit fee kind of similar to our neighboring cities, or is there also a discrepancy there?
Yeah, so the orange is the permit fees. So 648, that's the permit fee.
Oh, just the permit.
Just the
Okay,
permit
okay.
fee, yeah, so
No, I'm
that-
saying like, I was looking at the next page, the next slide, sorry, this one right here.
Yeah.
So the fees here for Public Works fee schedule. So it's just $100 per meter?
Yeah, there's not a meter on sewer, but that's the tap fee. That's the only system development fee we have for sewer.
Sorry, Chad, maybe you can answer what I'm kind of looking for. Like, there's a big discrepancy in.
Between sewer and water, or between the neighbors and us? My understanding is historically, we, as a city, didn't move forward with connection charges for obviously quite some time. We haven't done a full update of the comp plan in probably 25 years with
Oh,
regards.
geez, okay. That
It shows.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that happened in between, and another one of the reasons we didn't move forward was that King County instituted a connection charge that's on every single family house. It's a pretty significant charge, and if I think it's $15,000. It's assessed $1,000 essentially a year for the first 15 years you're in your house. And so that was one of the big things is when we got to talking about adding a system development charge for the city's system, we were already looking at development throughout the community that was having to face this charge from King County. Because of course, we really are a collection agent, and then we ship everything to King County, then they take care of it. Ultimately, it gets treated before it heads out to the Sound. So those charges were so stiff that it held us back really as a system from moving forward with the system development charges. But we think it's time we take a good look at them.
Yeah, I think it's time, because I know our neighboring cities, they're also in King County, so these developers are still paying those fees plus the cities, so.
There are some
Yeah.
areas that are not serviced by King County, like if you're in
Renton, though?
Lakehaven.
Okay.
Lakehaven. But no, Renton,
Yeah.
Bellevue, they're all.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Do we know how we compare, like, so the Sue's Creek water, or Sue's Creek, if you have Sue's Creek sewer, do they assess a separate, we don't get a connection charge on that?
No.
It would be,
That's specific
Okay.
to their system.
do we know what they're at?
I'm not, did you look?
No, I think we looked at the, comparison of cities, not necessarily districts, so we can
come
certainly
back
look
with
at them.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
come
just,
back
I'm
with
just
that.
curious, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let's see. We all done? Any other question? Okay.
Just instead of, and I'm sure you guys already are, to look at all of the other districts around, so we can have that comparison.
Yep, we'll add those to our spreadsheet, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Derek. No lights lit up, so thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, council.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Guys, we'll take a little break to 7 o'clock. Thank you.